There's a recording in progress. There's sound being shared.
Is there though?
There's a QuickTime video to be played.
QuickTime.
Bring me everyone.
What do you mean, everyone?
Everyone!
Welcome to Everyone Racers.
It's a show designed for the world of low-dollar racing and oddball car culture.
It doesn't matter what kind of limit champ
Or Lucky Track Dog League you run.
SCCA or NASA, we won't discriminate.
as long as you drive it hard and built it yourself.
Join us each week for tech discussions,
Tips, tricks, as well as news and notes from the world of amateur endurance racing.
And whether it's on the spot,
hella sweet.
Or we're lucky enough,
and Chrissy,
and Chrissy,
I give you just the tip.
we're sure you'll giggle a little.
and learn even less.
Everyone report to the paddock.
This is Chris.
This is Chrissy.
Mental.
We're Everyone Racers. It is episode 342, amongst the earliest Ultra Ferraris to wear the now famous America nameplate. The 342 America was intended as an especially luxurious and powerful custom car for the factory's best clients, built with an extended 2,650 millimeter, that's right, thank you, wheelbase to accommodate the enlarged 200 horsepower Lampredi V12. It saw a total production run of only 6 examples for such clients as King Leopold of Belgium, Enzo Ferrari himself. If you aren't driving your ultra rare old Ferrari, then just keep listening because we're funny or something. Still no bingo card, but someday.
We
Hey.
definitely sound worse than a 50s Ferrari V12. So
Yes.
Well, you can listen to one of those. Maybe we'll just put some
On
mental can just like dub that over. How about
yes, there we go. 50s Ferrari dub over right here.
that? Okay. Wow.
Okay, yeah, there we go. That was amazing, right? That
excellent.
sounded
Yeah.
fantastic.
Wow.
Yeah, yeah. That
Oh,
was
if
great.
they only still sounded like that. Now they just are like electric and things. So let's move on. And what you working on? Mental. What are you working on?
So Sunday out celebrating Cinco de Mayo with my missus, and I got a phone call from some mutual racer friends. Skip Barber suddenly got a short notice thing to instruct here in Las Vegas, and they needed some people. So yesterday we did setup. Today I was instructing, and I will be instructing again tomorrow in the parking lot of the Allegiant Stadium, and I am instructing for, and I had squished the zoom so the share screen disappeared for a second. These guys, behold, and we've talked about this. This is Zoox. This is the Amazon-backed autonomous robo-taxis. And so they still have to have human intervention drivers. They also have some robot modified RAV4s. So they wanted they have their staff working on that. So we have some low speed autocross and braking and threshold and introduction to ABS and a bunch of other
Really?
genuinely fun things.
Huh.
And as a part of this, I had to go pick up a rental car, which is, it's sort of lame, but it does mean it's time to play Guess the Rental.
It's sort of lame.
Now, is this
Sorta
rental
lame.
for use in these instructional exercises?
Correct, which means that it is a 4-door sedan.
Okay. Well, that helps narrow it down. And is this from a mainstream rental car place? Nothing special.
Correct. Yes,
a
no,
Turo.
not Sixt or any of those guys. We went to the airport and got these things.
Are they all the same?
These things.
They're not all the same, I got a different one because the one that they usually liked to get, they were out of because we rented all of them. And then this will be your other clue. They offered me a Nissan Altima, and I said I would like not Altima, please.
Yes. Please and thank you. Okay. Next question is going to be the country of the brand.
United States.
Okay. I'm going to go Chevy Malibu.
That's what
You
I
would
was
be
gonna say.
Dead on.
That's what I was
Spot
gonna
on.
say.
Yes.
Okay.
I have one of
what
those
did,
for work for a pool car. They're not as hateful as an Altima. They're okay.
They are. The
a
turbo
car.
lag you could measure on a calendar. And
Just
they
wait for
also
it.
have moved on to CVT transmissions, which makes the turbo lag a little more annoying. But they've got keyless entry, decent stereos, and they're roomy.
Yeah,
roomy.
you could do worse.
You absolutely could do worse. An Altima, for
An
example.
Altima.
Right.
Yes.
Now, what
And
does
what's
everyone else
funny-
have?
Well, so we have two Boos, two Camrys, I'm sorry, three Camrys, and then we still ended up with a Sentra.
Mm,
Yeah,
Those poor people.
exactly.
well, maybe they don't know any better.
Fair. And
Well,
what's
the
funny
instructors do.
Oh, sure. Yes, yes, yes.
the instructors were like, "Oh, we like to use the Nissan Altimas because of turbo lag and the boozer." And I'm like, "I'm sorry, no. If you give unless you tell me
you're
you'll get an
wrong.
Altima, I'm not getting an Altima. I don't care if that thing makes my bed for me in the morning. No."
Yep. Excellent.
But it is it's great. I was meeting some of the West Coast instructors, and like all the rest of them, they're all frustrated. Brushes with greatness. The lead instructor has actually run LMP3 at Le Mans.
Really?
As a graduate of the challenge, or not the academy, the GT Academy. So, but yeah,
And
nice
now he's
folks.
driving Malibus around a
Malibu.
parking lot in a corporate
Wow.
Well,
gig.
but he had literally just come from Hong Kong where he had done like some serious racing. So yeah, it's all about
Okay, okay.
Good.
So yeah,
All
good
right.
folks.
Add it to the resume. Something different. What'd you do? What'd you do this week? Let me tell you.
So
well, it'll be
and, well,
interesting.
yeah,
Post up
and
some
what's
pictures.
nice
Are you
is,
allowed?
you know what? I haven't taken pictures. We were kind of busy all day today. So, but
Yeah, just
the
what the feel
staff is,
looks
they're all fun. They're all nice people, and they're not there to try and impress you. So they're all getting along, and it's it is a refreshing, nice, honest, team oriented school.
good.
Great.
Post up a pic. Be interesting to see what it looks like.
Those front tires are going to look great when they go back to.
Yeah, they are. That's
Well,
a fun idea. Bring it to take the
Because
rentals out.
it's a lot of low speed stuff, and I found, and people are going to laugh because they've already know this invention. There is a new thing called a drift pipe or a drift wheel, and it is a plastic, ultra like resistant plastic that mounts around a tire, and you could do it on both rear tires or just one, but it allows you to induce oversteer in a front wheel drive car in a very safe, controlled environment.
What?
And it still responds to corrections. And Skip Barber has a bunch of these.
Well, that's fun.
I think
Yeah. So now we don't have to go steal the trays from McDonald's.
Right. Because without all the electronic parking brakes, you can't really do e-brake turns or induce it with the e-brake anymore. So you got to do something else.
Exactly. Yeah. Yeah. The story behind it, one of the instructors was part of the development process. There was a guy in Guatemala, and he wanted to drift his Volkswagen, his new Beetle. And he just went and found this pipe. It was about the same size, and cut it and did this, and then started finding a way to mount it onto the tire permanently. And then as it started picking up in popularity, it's the people that make the bumpers for bullet trains now use that plastic. So it's extremely resistant to wear. You obviously don't want to take it at any great speed, but yeah, they use it for drift schools. It's fun.
Fantastic.
I had no idea.
I had neither. One of the guys said, "Hey, how much one of those costs if I wanted one?" I don't know where you get it. So,
Well, great. Looking forward to hearing how it goes.
Yes.
That's something interesting.
Yeah.
I have
Totally.
not been doing anything interesting. I was babysitting on Saturday, and then we went and saw some goat races on Sunday.
So
drank some
this
beer.
is very interesting to me. Goat racing.
Yes,
Yeah. Please tell me of the goat racing.
our local brewery, Sly Fox Brewery. Some people may have heard of it. They're pretty big, but they have a local. I guess their flagship location in Pottstown, not far from us. And every year, I don't know. It's been like we went and I just
I'd
pulled
say
up pictures
at
from
least
17.
2015, at least 2015, if not a
At
little bit than that.
least.
Yeah.
Yeah. And they've been having it for a long time, annual. It was rain or shine, and it rained a lot. So we stood out in the rain for a while, and we had a great time. Saw some friends there too. And saw some racing friends, actually hung out with them like we did last year. And yeah, it's a good time. So the brewery you get a bunch of beers and watch some goats race. And so the goats race, they run on a leash with an owner. So it's not like, and you can't pull them. There's all kinds of rules to it. So,
It's in a straight line. It's like
thank you.
50 yards, maybe.
Maybe.
It's enough. And yeah, so they say go, and you run with your goat, but the goat has to cross the finish line first. That is important. So you
You
can't pull the
can't
goat
pull it.
across the line, or you
I
can't
feel like
entice the
that
goat
rule
across
is
the
based
line.
on someone exploiting,
Yeah, well, could you stand in front
Oh.
of the goat with a bucket of corn and be like, "Come on," or they apparently like bananas. So like
They
here,
love
the goat's like-
bananas.
the goat's like,
Chips,
I want that
banana
banana. But if you're leading it with the banana, then that doesn't count. You've got to get it running enough to go over the finish line without crossing first.
And all the
And it's a bunch of heats of 5 goats, and it gradually works its way down.
Good time. There's plenty of them are ornery. They're
because they're
hilarious.
goats.
Yep.
Mhm.
And so some of them you have to pull when the race is already over. There's usually one that says, "I'm not moving." Mm-mm.
They have to, they have to wheelbarrow it off by picking
Yep.
its back legs up.
They've done
and
that.
pushing
Yeah, and
it
then walk
forward.
it. Yeah. So it was a great time. We had a good time. Regardless, it was raining a lot, but it was all good.
Still fun. You walk around, drink good beer, look at goats, watch them race. It's good.
Yep.
Yeah, look at
Yeah,
goats. That's
was
just
fun.
funny.
And support local. That's the better part. That's a good reason for it. Anyway,
Mhm.
I watched a great race too, which we'll talk about in a little bit. Chris was
Yes,
actually
we
working on a
will.
car though, so then that's better.
I have been doing some car work. I got the Mazda bumper mostly done. It's been primed and painted and installed, and so that's all nice. It fits very nicely. The grill is back in it. The other trim is back on it. All that's good. And I'm just doing some last additional ducting work on it now, because this is the time to do it while it's still not all together. So almost done with that. And then I have to, once it's been painted for a week, just do a quick rubbing compound and buff just to smooth out that Rust-Oleum, make it look its best. It's not being a 3-stage paint, you can see the difference in the pearl, but it's not too far off on the shade of white, so that's
fine.
okay.
It's
And
fine.
also we got a new dishwasher, and I have installed that.
Ooh. There
It
we
was
go.
on clearance. We've been looking for a long time for one that was not
I
a
mean-
Samsung or LG, and like middle of the road, like not with every feature that's going to break, but something decent enough. And this one was on clearance at the Home Depot by my work. So
And
got
what did we
that.
replace?
The
a work-
original to the house,
A working one.
1988.
It was
Kenmore dishwasher.
working.
Yeah.
And then Chris decided that he found one that was nicer, and my dishwasher is sitting on my front driveway saying, "I'm not
Well,
dead yet."
It's amazing that it's lasted this long.
I remember
could-
having this conversation when I was there, and you're like,
Yes.
I am impressed, but you can't have a conversation when it's turned on.
Oh, it's correct.
Yeah.
Yeah, you can like hear it upstairs. It's that loud. And it was very inefficient and very hot and used very much water, but it was awesome.
And it was going to die. It could die tomorrow, and I would have applauded its wonderful long life. It could have gone another 4 years, would have applauded its wonderful long life. But the time to buy the dishwasher is when a decent one is on clearance, not when, crap, I need a dishwasher right now.
Or we just live with no dishwasher, which is also a possibility. There are
Sure.
people that don't have dishwashers, but
I
Well, and
know,
you
but-
guys could, because you guys like wash as you go kind of a deal.
we also have we use 2 plates and 2
It's 2
forks.
of
So
us,
it's
yes.
like, it's not
But yeah,
hard.
Replacing it when you don't want to, pay for a bunch of stuff is compelling, because that's why we're getting our air conditioner done next week.
Yep.
It also, I'm sure if it was going to break, it would break on, like November 24th or something like that.
Yes.
So let's avoid that.
Fine. You win.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah,
Well,
okay.
whatever. It's in now. So
It's in now.
So if you need
Too
a free
bad.
dishwasher, head around to the CNC Mayhem factory. It's in the driveway.
yeah, I'm going to put it
you
out
know,
by see if the trash takes it. I don't know if they will. Or maybe a
Yeah.
scrapper will
Probably.
take it. It's got some metal on
Well,
it.
I
But
feel like
little
this would be
bit,
a
not
great one
much.
for the shop. For the people that have like those separate shops and they want to wash the machine heads.
oh, it'd be great for
Yeah.
that.
Oh my gosh, it'd be perfect for that.
Yeah.
Oh, who's that? I don't know who does that, but this dishwasher will get it clean.
I'll put it
We
out
might have
on the
washed a thing or two in there.
That's true.
with
I'm going to
that
put it on the
dishwasher.
street and I'm put a sign on it that says works. If anybody
Mhm.
wants it, they can have it.
There you go.
Okay. Yep.
Okay, fine. Pour one
Okay.
out from a dishwasher. Okay, this is don't stop.
Hey, we've had great luck at our stairs with our stays at Airbnb, vacations. We've got a bunch of stuff booked in Europe from when we're going there soon, and even our podcast trips to PRI and Pittsburgh Miniature Grand Prix. But a set of random guests will have the best Airbnb luck of all time, I think. On Monday until Wednesday this week, Airbnb opened reservations to stay at the Ferrari Museum in Maranello. Joe Kosinski at Car and Driver has very exclusive specifics. As part of their new Icons series, Airbnb has some special bookings available, such as Prince's Purple Rain House in Minneapolis, Marvel's X-Men's Mansion in Westchester, New York, and the Ferrari Museum, as we said. So now in this list, randomly selected applicants will get to sleep on a red leather bed surrounded by historic race cars and the 110 trophies they've won.
Wow.
They'll dine at Ristorante Cavallino, the old company canteen, but is now fitted with portraits and memorabilia from Ferrari's history. You will get a hot lap of the Pista del Fiorano and a Ferrari 296 GTB driven by Mark Jean, former F1 driver, and tickets to the 2024 Emilia Romagna Grand Prix.
Wow.
Bobbity boopity.
I wonder how much it is.
I was legitimately scared to click.
Okay.
And how much?
I have no clue.
Oh, he didn't. He like
I was
didn't
scared
actually
to
click.
Oh.
It actually didn't click. Okay.
I wonder
okay.
if they're actually going to charge for it or if it's still, it's a promotional cost, like whatever. It's a unique thing because you only get to do it once. Who knows? Anyway, cool.
Okay. Well, do it. Somebody do it and then tell us how it is. How about that? Okay. If you're like us, you were watching the best F1 race so far this season in Miami, but you missed another historic finish. A few times zones over at Kansas Speedway.
I'm sorry,
Kyle-
Kansas Speedway.
I
really figured that one.
That's okay. I was like, I don't know where.
I've never heard of Kansas Speedway.
I was going to keep reading. Sorry. I didn't write the copy. Kyle Larson won the Advent Health 400 by a mere 1,000th of a second. It was so close, the naked eye couldn't discern a clear winner. That's crazy. A link to the Sun article by David Scott, which includes a photo of it. It's in its notes. Kyle Larson had a very NASCAR response to the decision, saying that was wild. It was crazy. I mean, that race from start to finish was amazing. You guys got your money's worth today, and I'm just proud to be part of the show. Want to be part of our show? Oh, you could still join the F1 League if you'd like. That's crazy.
I have fallen to third because I didn't believe
Oh.
in Lando. But that's
Well,
the
I
picture
mean,
of
who
the finish
put-
there on the screen.
Really, who put Lando as their number one for
No.
that race?
Not many people.
No.
No.
I'm very happy for Lando.
Oh,
Very- I think-
Aren't
absolutely.
we all?
I think
Isn't
every single
everybody?
person there was happy for Lando.
How about everybody ever?
Seriously, I feel like even Max Verstappen was like, you know what?
Well, because
he's good-
they're
he's a good
friends, so I
kid.
think
He's a
he
good kid.
is.
He earned
Yeah.
it.
Right. If somebody's going to beat him, it wasn't somebody dumb.
We were celebrating Cinco de Mayo. So I comes time for the race. I go to the sports book at the Cosmopolitan and I sit down and there's a group of F1 fans on the couch in front of me, clearly like 2 Ferrari fans and 3 McLaren fans. So that was a whole thing. And we all sit down and we get settled and then they turn it to a baseball game and we're like, ah!
No.
And they go to another
No.
TV. So we all get up and move. And we're watching the race and the Ferrari McLaren battles and Checo and everything that goes on in that one. And the final lap, Lando comes past there at the white flag. they changed it to horse racing, and 14 people
No.
in the sports book stand up and went, "Ah!" First non-Red Bull, non-Ferrari potential winner in 2.5 years, and you put it on horse racing? And someone clearly
Read
got
the
that.
crowd, please. Like, read the crowd. You have some animated folks here, and you had to wait literally, what is this, 30?
3
Like,
minutes.
they,
Not
right.
even,
At
it was,
max.
and they got it back in time. But yes, it was a whole bunch of us like, are you, there's not a horse racing track anywhere in this city, and there's an F1 track 14 feet from where I'm standing. Come on.
And obviously, people that care about this, and how many, doesn't it have 95,000 TVs in this place? Like, or you the place that
that's
has
not the
the
one I normally go
okay.
to. This
Oh,
was,
okay, okay.
But yeah, they had 20 TVs, and then they have their own horse racing section of TVs behind all of
No,
that for all
no.
the people on there.
Do
Yeah,
not.
it was
You should
someone
not be a patron.
Someone fat fingered it
Or-
and really immediately realized their
Or you
mistake.
should find a new bar. That might be the answer, because that's unacceptable. That's not
Ah.
showing care for your patrons.
So, well, I feel like it was also a self-critiquing situation. Speaking of self-critiquing, do you want to dip your toe in collectors' cars? Do you want something that's going to beat that manual transmission Cadillac Cimarron at the Concours de Le Mans? Here is your chance. Jerry Perez over at The Drive has the Penske Collection's recently for sale of what he calls, quote, the lamest Indy 500 pace cars. Is
I mean, there have been a lot of
correct.
lame ones.
Wow.
All right. So the first one is a 2002 Oldsmobile Bravada. And it is that's the Indy car right there. There it is. And it's full
Oh.
regalia. 4-liter,
Wow.
270 horsepower inline six. It's only got 616 miles. All right. And there's that one.
That is so bad. Like
It
it,
is
it
so
was
bad.
Cor-
It's
if it's
so
Corvettes
bad.
forever, it's like okay, fine, another Corvette or Firebird or something. But a Bravada,
Not
Like,
even like
oh.
seriously, like you couldn't have gotten like the Trailblazer SS or something on that one. So yeah, I'm gonna go with you're right on that one. The next
Yeah.
one, a 1988 Chrysler LeBaron. Like this is the old pop-up headlight cover K car based LeBaron.
at least those had those turbo motors that could be turned at the wick turned
Yes.
up on them pretty well.
2.2 liter, 228 miles, 1 of 1,000. All right.
It's got to be the nicest '88 LeBaron left in the world.
It
It
really
might
does.
be.
And,
Yeah.
and honestly, I thought the styling on these was always very pretty. Just the cars were terrible. All right. A 1985 Oldsmobile Cutlass Calais pace car edition. Now, that is a 3-liter V6, which is a freaking crime when the Quad 4 was available and it's an automatic and you could have gotten a manual.
GM
So-
never made a 3-liter V6. They had a
Fuel
2.8 and
injected.
3.1.
Okay. I don't know.
Well, unless it's something weird, who knows?
Yeah. Well, it's been
And
under the
I'm
care
not
of the
believing
Penske
their
team.
I'm not believing their specs so far because the Bravada had an Atlas straight 6, which is 4.2. They said it was 4-liter, so I don't know. Who knows?
All right, fair enough.
Maybe there's something
Hmm.
I don't know about obscure GM. I know, hey, Eric Rude would know.
Eric Reed would absolutely know. But I like that generation. I know the Grand Dam, and I know that the what was the Buick version, but you get the Quad 4 with the manual
Yeah.
on those. But all right.
They even
Uh,
made a club racing version of these, like they were actually
Yes.
like okay, not good,
Yes.
but okay.
Not good, but okay. But impressive
Yes.
that GM did that. Now, I'm going to say that they're not all lame because they also had this 1979 Ford Mustang pace car. And that is a proper V8 Ford with a 4-barrel. It is unrestored, 1,600 miles. It doesn't have T-tops, but that's okay. And there we go, 4-speed manual transmission.
We made all of like 150 horsepower at that 5-liter
Exactly.
too.
And it made a bunch of noise. And the 1984 Pontiac Fiero Pace Car Edition. This has to
Wow.
be one of like only 2 that Jeff Hanke doesn't own.
Excellent
so-
wheels.
Wow.
Yes.
I have to say, I was wrong. GM did make a 3-liter V6. It was based on the same architecture as the Buick V6, so it's the smallest version of what is most commonly known as the 3.8.
Oh.
Who knew?
There you go.
It was
All
very
right.
rare, but they did.
So all of those links and the auction itself will be included in our show notes. And if you buy one of those, let us know, because I think their Chrysler is pretty. You know, the Fiero, I like that one. I don't know.
Give me that
Yeah.
bravada all day. No, just kidding.
I still think a Bravada would be an excellent Lemons car for somebody to do. And if you get a 96 to 97, it's the multi-port injection one with a new body style, but it still has the same transfer case and transmission as the Cyclone. So you basically could just use Cyclone parts to lower it and put massive tires on it. And then yes, you don't have the turbo, but lots of things would bolt into it. But I think if you had it actually like not tragic 96 Oldsmobile Bravada as a race car, you could win whatever award you wanted. That would be fun.
That
But then you'd still have to
encapsulates the make
drive
well-informed bad decisions. He just gave you the technical specs for a potential IOE winning car.
and you still have to
and
drive a
probably even Class
bravada.
C.
It doesn't matter. That's half the fun of it. I
Mm.
definitely
Or
didn't
you-
look
you
into
could-
it enough
you
when
could
we had an
just-
S10 already.
Yeah, you could
Mhm.
put an S10 on top of the Bravada.
It's funnier if it's a Bravada. Like
is
that's
funnier.
it's funnier, especially if it's in that nice green color that all they wear in
They all came in that
1997.
green color, the
right?
boxy ones. Yeah.
That'd be great.
Yes.
Oh well.
Okay.
Anyway,
Okay.
hey, this is relating to our main topic. We're going to talk about fiberglass tonight. So first, I got to ask everybody, including everybody at home, do you like autocross?
Sure.
Yes. Okay. All right. Great. Do you like boats?
Yes.
Not as much as you guys, but I can appreciate it.
Okay. Great. Do you want to die by drowning or blunt force trauma?
I want to say no, but my life decisions up until this point.
I would also
That's a
say
solid
no.
maybe
and,
from mental. So,
and,
go ahead.
I've also been, and even our listeners have pointed out some of my questionable decisions as well. So I would probably say not my first way to go, but
Okay.
possible.
Well, hey, on Racing Junk, they've got a jet sprint race boat. This is an A400 class sprint boat. And the copy reads, extremely competitive 400 class sprint boat ready to race. 407-inch Dart built by Honest Performance. And this looks like it's a built-up small block Chevy. Engine has 0 races on it since last refresh. Dyno and build sheets available. Dry sump, race pack data logger, all the best
Oh
of
my
everything.
God.
8.5-inch Scott pump with spare impeller, spare parts trailer, race tech seats. Like this thing, it's
a race car.
It is.
It has.
In
It
fact,
seriously
it's
has
a gas
bolstered.
pedal. Yeah.
Right, and it's got bolstered
Oh, that's
seats. It's
beautiful.
got a like a steering wheel with a flat bottom and missing top. It's got a small black Chevy in the back with zoomy pipes sticking up out the back. It's completely
Got a
it's
roll
like
cage.
Actual race
roll cage.
seats.
Actual race seats, like with the side wings for your head, harnesses, roll
It's-
cage.
It's gonna try to make
Sponsored
you
by a
not
distillery, so proper.
die.
Yeah. Oh
That
yeah.
is-
You're gonna
Yeah.
die.
Yeah, you're gonna die. But like, oh, there's a video. Oh,
There's a
wait,
video.
oh my
We
goodness.
have to watch the video.
Oh, okay.
I mean,
All right.
you've seen
What-
these things like on back when they had speed vision. You'd see this. Sounds right.
Where is it?
There it
There it
goes.
comes.
Oh,
All right, so viewers, this is like basically a creek. This is like 3 feet of water carved out of Florida, and that there's no way that water's like this.
It's
Oh,
autocross in
wow.
canal.
It is really hand dug today. That is some brown muddy water. I can see why. they
I
use
mean-
Halo seats. That thing fit hurting. They have some that are 4 or 5 feet.
I mean, this looks kind of fun.
I love the way
Yeah.
it goes through that particular part of the track.
Thanks.
You never see the
Thanks.
back end of the boat move. He just goes straight through.
Yeah. And it's fun when you see them go off course. They just kind of like bounce up onto the land until they stop.
Clean
And then
run.
they gotta go get them.
Wow.
This is what you do when you have
And he
nothing else
continues
to do.
to shave time.
Yeah.
41,922 on that go through. That
That was impressive. Oh man.
Okay.
So, and this guy paid for or used our code. And
Yeah.
he's got 14 pictures. It's got a video. It's got lots of stuff. This is how you sell
Yeah.
something. This is in it's in the Pacific Northwest. It's in Washington State. And
Oh,
it
I
is
was feeling like this was a southern thing.
That's
Oh,
so
it's-
red to
Surprise.
Florida, but you're right. Yeah.
Yeah,
okay,
really. I
yeah.
was thinking
yeah.
Alabama. I'm feeling
Yeah.
like places that
No, this is
Which
this
flat
it is
part of
currently
Oregon
in
is basically Alabama.
it's Washington State. It is 50 grand. It is not cheap, but this one seems like it is an above average
it's ready
example.
for you.
I feel like that motor
Wow.
alone is 80 grand.
Wow. That
Ugh.
was so much. Okay.
That is
Wow.
awesome. I
So-
love that you found that, Chris.
That's amazing.
See,
oh,
and that's what we talk about when you joy scroll. Right? We're all smiling. That's fun.
I'm so glad that they paid. That was so worth the pro membership.
It really was.
Adding
That
a
is-
video. Wow. I'm good. Good for you guys. Not that we're gonna.
All
we're
right.
not gonna
So
fight.
hey,
Okay.
check out Racing Junk. Tell them we sent you. And then if you find something cool, post it up in your social media with the hashtag RJ Joy Scrolling.
Okay.
Yep.
I'm coming. Races.
Lemons is at Gingerman for the Rust Belt GP. There's 96 cars coming
Wow.
to this, and get this, 5 BMWs.
Yay!
Which is all
what a-
of the ones in Michigan, I think.
right.
And
I mean,
two of
that
them
I
are
think
V8 swapped.
I think that's our best BMW ratio we've had in a long time. I mean,
Two of them are
five-
American powered.
like that's 5.2%. That's a great ratio. 3 Miatas, 10 Hondas, and a Porsche. Okay.
And a whole list from Rude because he likes to give us a list or gives a list to highlight all of the fun things. There's going to be a lot of awesome stuff happening. A Studebaker Lark, the return of the MG Metro, 2 engine swap Triumphs, a Rover SD1 to complete the English car bonanza,
I
Corvair.
can feel my beer getting warm now.
Corvair Cavalier or S10, who will finish first?
The Corvair.
An Opel GT that is probably completely and totally insane. 4 Mercours. I'm not positive, but I feel like that's an all-time record. He's not positive. What? A potential trash ton cup between Dumpster Fire Motorsports, Dumpster Fire Racing, and Garbage Red Car Motorsport.
See, those are proper names. Don't use your name for a team. Use your attitude for a team
Right?
name. Great.
Canadians with Lemon's first official Cobalt SS, the ever awesome 47 Plymouth,
Well, Mike.
new team with a C3, a new team with a WRX, not LOLNB,
Yeah, that's not the Bish crew.
a team who gave up their Buick Regal for a BMW Z3, and a
Boo.
Suzuki Kizashi that is one of the cars to beat for the last 3 I just listed.
Yep.
I was there when that car premiered, and they literally they work at a car lot, and it got traded in, and no one wanted it. So they're like, can we get a fair market value on this? And I believe the reply was, it's a Suzuki Kajashi. You're fine. CVT transmission. We were so convinced it was going to blow up. Never did. On that note, the judges will be Judge Shelley, Judge Brian, and the pride of the Midwest, Judge Eric himself. They will not be swayed with weak bribes and weaker themes. You better hit up Amazon right now, because I have seen Judge Shelley dispense justice, and it is merciless for anyone who does not even attempt a theme. And Brian ain't much more forgiving either. He's pretty ruthless if you come to his inspection booth with something weak sauce.
No weak
You guys saw him at Pitt, right? Yeah. Quick and easy. Right now, I'm giving you the key. Get on Amazon, order a box of 50-cent tiaras and a box of little magic wands, and everyone just go be pretty, pretty princesses.
I loved that game. Have you played that game?
I
I'm
have
pretty sure we have
not.
it down in our basement. It's great. I liked it.
Excellent. And hey, don't forget the potluck. League of Legitimate Nigerian Businessmen is putting it on. They know how to party. They know how to eat.
His
Yes, Chrissy.
recent His recent Facebook post was him talking about macaroni salad because he has taken my spiel, and I was like, oh, nice spiel, because he's saying don't bring macaroni salad because nobody likes macaroni salad unless it's good macaroni salad, and he listed recipes for good macaroni salad, and I was like, I recognize this. And then he started posting pictures of him talking about my potato salad. So it's a thing. Don't bring canned, boxed, already pre-made macaroni or potato salad.
If I'm not mistaken, in addition to Malort, there will be haggis.
Oh, great.
Oh.
Yep.
I
Nobody.
did drink enough once to try the haggis, and I'm very upset to say that I did not hate the haggis. It was actually really good.
Was it after the Malort?
I wasn't drinking Malort when I ate the haggis.
Oh.
Okay.
but
I
yeah.
wasn't sure if that was like,
Well, that's
if
a
you
good
eat-
thing though. If you drink the Malort first,
Right.
anything will taste better.
this is exactly what I was getting at. I thought if you just did that, then you're like, oh, well, everything is okay. If that is good, it's not good when you don't have Malort. But if you have Malort, then haggis, then you're just like, oh, I must need to drink Malort for this to be tasting good. That's where I was thinking you were getting at, pretty much.
You're already making bad decisions at that point, so might as
All
well
of the above.
go big or
Exactly.
go home.
You know, and the Malort, the haggis, it's kind of mushy, so it's not going to be that bad coming back up. The Malort,
Mm-mm.
oh, it's going to be awful.
Yeah.
Mixed together, not good. Anyway, race and results time.
Lemons was at Hallett. Winner in laps was It's Around Here Somewhere racing in a boring E46. Winner on B was Futile and Stupid Jester Racing Team in a 90 Miata. Winner Class C was Battle Scarred Motorsports in a 74 Pinto. Well done. Well done.
They walked away with so many prizes, as we will keep going with this. The organizer choice, it went to Socialist Federal Racers of Yugoslavia. Yugoslavia in an 88 Yugo. The heroic fix went to Battle Scarred Motorsports in their Mustang.
That's
what it says.
if you remember the cheaty Mustang that ended up getting destroyed in 27 seconds. I believe that is that one.
Okay. Well, they must have fixed it. And Judge's Choice went, we're just here for the SR in a Chevy Blazer.
All right. I got screwed. Went to our friend Skinny Coyote Racing in the 515/99 Ford Ranger. I told you guys that they had swapped it up to a V8. They had problems all weekend. They did not turn a whole lot of laps. And what I found about after I found out that they won, there was a fire. But they
Oh,
they
That's
got
hot.
back on there. Yes.
drop it like it's hot.
Yep. Halloween Meets Gasoline was Loose Nuts Racing. That is one race that they have entered where they have not won Halloween Meets Gasoline. I think they got org choice at CMP, and that's in their 2000 Chevy bitchin' Camaro. That is a great group of folks. In the Bobcat versus Pinto Cup, guess what? Battle Scarred. Motorsports reign supreme in their 74 Pinto. And the IOE was Shopaholics in a 2001 Chevy Lumina because you brought a Lumina. Duh.
Mhm.
Pretty much.
All right. Sorry to double up on you folks here, but American Endurance Racing was at the Glen. Now, they ran 3 races over the weekend, and they
This
chose
is why
their
it
class
was
winners
confusing.
based
Mhm.
on their outcome. So class 1 was number 771. It was not fast, just furious. They were in a Miata. And race 1, they finished 3rd. Race 2, they finished 1st. And race 3, they finished 3, but that was better than everybody else. Class 2 was RX Racing. I believe Prescription Racing is an accurate one. And a 986 Boxer. Their first race, they were 14th. Second race first, and then third, they were first. Class 3 was Ruben ASF Motorsports in an E36, and they were first, and fifth. Class 4 was Car Dorks and another boring BMW. Now, in race 1, they were class 3, but they broke out. So they ended up in class 4, and then they finished second and third. So they won class 4. And class 5 was Race Wife in their 458 Ferrari Challenge car. Now, they finished the final race, race 3, they won. Race 2, they were third. But in a 6-car class on race 5, they were 5th.
How'd that go?
So, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Overkill is not
everyone gets a
always the best kill, and
trophy.
it makes me feel bad to say that.
Everybody, we have one. It's over there.
Yeah.
Lucky Dog, Desert Dash, and Cinco de Mayo celebration was at Willow Springs. I'm sure their celebration was amazing. So Saturday went to Slow Dogs, won with Twisted Sister, less than a minute behind, and then third, what?
It's
What?
tight. Yeah.
Yeah, tight. Third was Zip Tie Racing. There's 58 cars that completed on Saturday because we did not, or excuse me, competed. They raced on Saturday. And then Sunday, Occupy Pit Lane won with Twisted Sister again, right behind them. And then it looks like it was 9 seconds behind them. And
Wow.
then, yeah, really close racing. And then 559 Racing was in third. And there was only 51 that competed on Sunday. But we had not reported on the pre-race, but that's the post-race.
All right.
Listen up, fever time.
From Jimmy G. He told us, forgot to send this in a couple days ago, but my eye twitched at last week's intro. We had 341s at officer training school as well. Someday I'll have to tell you the naked OT, which is officer trainee story. I want to hear that, and I so don't want to hear that.
Oh, that's good. I'm glad somebody else got it because both of us were like, what? And on the YouTube, AIJ,
Al.
or is it
Al Jones.
Al J? Okay, great.
You know Al.
Yeah,
Remember?
Al, I do
Yeah.
remember him, that guy.
Yeah.
He said, I truly appreciate how you are using this podcast not to bark out lunch orders to me. Don't worry, I got you. Next year at Pit Race lunches on me. Ooh, yay. Adding, I will teach you how to be real locals. You can order off menu shakes and combine flavors like chocolate peanut butter or peanut butter and banana.
I'm
I
very
can't
excited.
wait. I'm going to hold you to it.
Cones and Nat then suggested strawberry banana for life. That's gross. Tyler said, Mental gives me crap for suggesting airplane-based numerical tines and then he uses Air Force document numbers. What is this? Everyone airmen?
Oh, that's good. There's
Oh.
a cat.
Now, Mike Anderson popped in on the YouTube to talk about some of the stuff we talked about last week, the Mid-Ohio deal. And, he's the owner of that, or the co-owner of the car. And just let us know, they have two people who they let fuel during the race because they use those dry brakes. You've got to be really precise on there. And they also, when you're dumping that much fuel, I mentioned those cans will empty in 10 seconds. You want to be careful, but you have to be precise because they are very good on that one. And then working on the cars, anyone's allowed to clean the cars. It's just, as we talked about, when Ben and Carl start replacing engines, it's just best to get out of the way, make sure there's beer, tools, and food, and it just gets done. On their primary car on most weekends, they have Beamer Speed doing the after race prep, and they've got a system, know exactly what to check, what order they do it in, and who's doing it right. And he all ties this all into that old sign that everyone saw in the shop that says mechanics rates are $45 an hour, $55 an hour.
I'll go to that shop. Wow.
Yeah, $65 an hour if you tried to fix it, $75 if you have an idea how to fix it, and $125 an hour if you try to help. So that's what he was relating to. This is we talked about that one. WRL, very competitive series. I argue that the Palomar racing experience offers a premium experience at an unmatched price in that area, but they do have their folks. And that's why the lemons, why are you sitting around? You must be doing something or start drinking, mentality doesn't necessarily work at that level. You know who never tries to help and doesn't annoy her mechanic?
I was gonna say, who gives her a premium experience.
I feel like she's just going.
Like she has that sign in her kitchen, baker's rates.
She doesn't, but she should. That's a thing. Hello,
Yep.
Mom.
Hello.
Okay, it's my time.
Are you guys ready to get itchy?
I love it.
I deliberately buried this at the beginning
Why?
of the show, what you working on. I was very excited last week because I've got my 914 and I want to do some fiberglass work. But between last week's show and this week's show, at the end of this month, I am taking possession of 2 Formula Vs. So I need to know how to do fiberglass.
Okay. Well,
Great.
get ready to get itchy because there's no way around it. All right. Tonight, we're going to talk about fiberglass. And now I will preface this that I am not a professional fiberglass user. I am a hobbyist who has used this in amateur ways for like 20 something years when I have things that are broken, mostly boats. And that's where I learned how to use it. Back in the day, the best college job ever, I worked for a guy who was rich and had boats and were big, and he liked to have someone futz around on boats with him. So I got to do it, and I got to learn a lot about it, and I've used it on my own a lot of times too. And I find I use it not just for boats, but I use it for all kinds of weird things with race cars because it's just an easy way to do weird shapes and unusual things and stick things together. And I just used it. The reason we thought about this is I used fiberglass to fix the bumper that got all cracked and distorted at Pitt. So we're going to go through a fiberglass basics bit tonight. And if someone works with fiberglass a lot, they're probably going to catch all the things that I am missing or I'm not quite right at. But I think this is a good 101 to understand what we're doing with fiberglass. So please jump in with your questions as we go. You too. So let's start off with, what are the materials you need for fiberglass? And part one is you need some resin. This is liquid. This is half of what makes fiberglass. Really, fiberglass in general is you've got a resin and you have a substrate of glass fibers, hence fiberglass. If you were to use carbon fiber or Kevlar, it's basically the same thing. It's just a different substrate. So we're going to start talking about resins first. There's 3 different types, essentially, but only 2 of them are really ever used anymore. Vinyl ester resin used to get used. It really is no longer. Polyester resin is still being used regularly. And there's also epoxy resin. I am generally a fan of epoxy resin over the others. There are different reasons that people like the different ones. Epoxy tends to be more expensive and a little bit harder to work, but it also is a little more versatile and I think a stronger end result than the polyester resin, which is what most of the general boat builders use. So, you went really. So I'm going to mostly focus on epoxy resin because I also think it's a nice thing for the hobbyist because you can get the epoxy resin and you get a big gallon of the base resin, and then there are various different hardeners that you mix into it depending on how fast you want it to cure, which is directly related to the temperature. So if it's hot out, you need a slow hardener. If it's cold out, you need a fast hardener because it hardens up based on temperature. If you mix up a pot of resin and leave it, it's exothermic. You'll go and touch it later and it'll be hot. And as it gets hot, it's going to set up real fast. So temperature control is important. So that's why deciding which hardener to use matters. I'm going to shamelessly plug West System Epoxy because it's what I've used very successfully over the years. It was originally, there were some guys that decided they wanted to build boats back in the day, and they wanted to do it their own way, and they made their own set of epoxies and resins and fiberglass stuff to make their boats. Now, it turns out their boat designs weren't very good, but they were really good at these epoxy stuff and the boat building materials and stuff. So they stopped building boats really, and they focused on this other stuff, and it's quite good. And I like it because you can, like I said, you buy the gallon of the base resin, and then you get the quart of the hardener, and they come with little pumps. And so it's a 1-to-1 ratio of the pumps. So if you put 1 pump of hardener, 1 pump of resin, and you get the right mix and the right ratio.
Like making the coffees, the fancy coffees with the pump stuff.
Yeah.
Is this available only at fancy boat shops, or can we find that on Amazon? Or
It's on Amazon. Yeah.
cool.
Yep. And I'll later on I'll talk about some particular suppliers that I like for this kind of stuff. So that's your basics of the resin. It is like with epoxy, it starts off liquid, it sets hard. Okay, but resin itself, you can't just use resin to build stuff because it's brittle. It can crack. It doesn't have any strength to it. It's hard but not strong. Like concrete. You can't just kind of mix. If you can take concrete, you can put stuff on it. That's great. But if you try to flex it or do anything with concrete, it's going to fall apart unless it's got a substrate like rebar or mesh or something like to hold it together. Same kind of thing. Okay. So your substrate in fiberglass, we're going to talk about the glass fiber substrates, not the carbon fiber, not Kevlar, not any of those things. But I mean, you can use all kinds of things as substrates. Like car stereo guys use stuff like they'll make rings out of wood and whatnot, and then stretch like pantyhose around it to make weird, unusual shapes, and then wet that out with resin, and that'll harden up because it doesn't need to have much strength; it just needs to hold together. So um, fiberglass comes in essentially two different ways. One way is chopped matte. This is a whole bunch of little fibers of fiberglass all chopped up, like they put them through a salad shooter, and they end up in a sheet of varying thickness of lots of little bits of fiberglass. And if you had one of these sections of chopped matte, you could just grab it, a handful of it, and pull, and it'll come apart because it is just lots of little couple-inch pieces, all just very lightly stuck together. And that's good in that it's cheap for them to make and easy to make. And when you think about how it works when it mixes into the resin, all these fibers are going all kinds of different ways. So it's got lots of strength in lots of different directions. And when you're making it on the thicker side, especially, um, it all works out nicely in the end for how many different angles the fibers actually are. And it's cheap to use, and it comes in pretty thick sections too. So if you're making something bigger and stronger, this is giving you a good thick section. The other way you can buy fiberglass is in a cloth. So it is actually weaved strands woven together. It is you can grab it and pull it. It does not come apart because again, it is a woven cloth. It is much stronger. It is much more expensive. It is often unnecessary for a lot of the kinds of things that people can use fiberglass for, but they know the two differences between them. And and when you're using multiple layers, you put them at different directions too, because the weave has it going up and down, left and right, and then you might put your second layer on it at a 45-degree angle to the first, so that you've got the fibers going in different directions, because it's how all the different materials together play together that is how it to build strength. This is a composite. That's why they call it a composite, because it's composed of many different things together. And how do they fit together? So that's our basics of, we got resin, we got our substrate. Beyond that, especially if you're using something like West System, there are a whole lot of fillers and different things you can add to the base epoxy resin to do different things. I'll highlight two different ones that are useful, but there's a whole bunch of them. There's an adhesive filler. So this is like it's like a powder. It almost looks like Splenda. And you pour your Splenda into your mixed resin, and you mix until you get it to the consistency of like mayonnaise or even peanut butter, depending on what you're trying to do. And then you've got this really good quality adhesive to stick one thing to another. It's also thick enough that it can fill in some gaps. It's almost like you can almost use it like Bondo for bigger areas where you need stuff in. You can also do stuff like you get the adhesive filler in it and then take some of your chopped mat, and you can take those little fibers, you kind of tear it apart until you have small fibers, and you can mix the chopped mat in with it with the adhesive filler and put it in something, and that'll be a nice way to fill a hole potentially, or a divot, without having to go all out into full out layers of glass. So another kind of filler that is very commonly used is a fairing filler. This stuff is super lightweight. Like you have a big
you said
jar of
fairing?
it, and it weighs fairing, Fairing.
Okay.
And it's from, usually you do this to the bottom of a boat, and where there are joints and things, and you want to make it fair to the touch. FAIR. So consider this like their top coat of Bondo that you might be using in body work. And you can get like a big tub of it, weighs nothing. And inside it's this very, very light fluff that if you pick it up, you can just blow it away. It's very light. Mix that with your resin until you get the consistency you want, which in this case, you probably want like a mayonnaise consistency. And then you can spread that over an entire surface, and that's how you fair the whole thing and take away the surface imperfections of something.
All right. I think I
It-
have this. Otherwise, I'm really going to embarrass myself, but this is what looks like it.
That's a fairing compound, which
Yeah.
you can do that as well.
Okay.
I have some of those too. That, but in general, that's fairing is smoothing it out. And what that picture was showing mentally that was the backside of a chopped glass mat with resin, and as a result, it's not smooth. You've got all the little fibers sticking out, and they go with different textures. And you put your fairing compound over the top of that. You put thin layer on it, and then you sand that down to have a smooth surface. Sometimes it takes a couple layers, but in general, fairing, that's what it is. Now, fairing there's a lot of ways you can have fairing compound. I'm only talking about fillers for using with resins, but I've also used fairing mixes, which I've got. Basically, it's a jar that I've gotten from Jamestown distributors, a jar of blue and a jar of yellow. They take equal amounts out of them, put them on a board. Literally used a piece of cardboard, mix them together until it's consistently green, and then take that and use that to go over the areas that you want to fill, whether it's small cracks, whether it's imperfections, whether it's divots, whatever it is. Smooth that out with a scraper and eventually sand it down.
What's your working time with that?
It varies on temperature and how thick you're putting it on.
Okay.
If it's cold and you didn't use the right hardener, it won't harden up for hours. But if it's hot and you use the wrong hardener, it'll harden up before you finish mixing it practically. Yeah.
We line
right.
all of our stuff up that we need when
So
you epoxy.
precision matters. Okay.
Okay, and when we get to process, we'll talk about more about that, how precision totally matters. So just know there are a lot of things you can put into resins that do different things. Like sailboat wise, like you need to stick this winch to this top of this boat. All right, you can almost want to bolt it. You also want to stick it with something that's going to really help stick it on, because there could be thousands of pounds on a winch. So that's when you'd use like those adhesive fillers. So, okay, beyond that, there's a lot of other supplies you're going to need to do fiberglass beyond the resin and the substrate and the filler that you might want to use, or your fairing compound. You're going to need a lot of popsicle sticks. Now they make actual like plastic sticks just for this kind of thing, which are very nice and have a nice edge on them. You can scrape things out really nicely. Those are great. I have some of those too, but most often time I use popsicle sticks, or like the big like tongue depressor kind of ones, because they're super cheap and easy, and that's how you can mix your resin all together and get it started. And if you leave it in or the pot hardens up and you ruined a batch, well, okay, it's a popsicle stick. Who cares? So get yourself
that's
some
really
popsicle
annoying,
sticks.
because I spend like, not with fiberglass, but in enormous amounts of time of my wandering around my garage looking for something to mix those things together. Oh, do I care
Just
about the
have your
screwdriver anymore? Or
Oh
this piece of
no,
cardboard?
just get the sticks.
Seriously, now I just,
No, it's part of the
Mix it.
prep. That's
Yeah.
part of the
In a hobby store, sometimes you'll see them.
boom.
Like
Yeah,
I got
just
one at
my
clearance
next
somewhere. It's in a
Amazon
dusty
order,
bag.
throw a chunk
Right.
of popsicle sticks in there. That's brilliant.
Yeah, and get the little ones a little bigger, like the tongue depressor ones. Those are handy too, to have both sizes. All
Yeah.
right.
Did you say what you mix in them? Mix in.
I'm getting there.
Oh, okay, good.
So now you're
Sure.
mixing it in something. Okay. I have a whole variety of very nice measuring of cups that have gradients on the sides, that so you can actually put things to the exact amount, right? Oh, that's great. You know what else is great? That container of sour cream or cottage cheese.
All day. We hear Chris go zoop, zoop. He's digging through, and we're trying to find what we just threw out. Or, oh, hey, you
What's
know
in the
what?
recycling,
I think
right?
there's only 2 teaspoons of ricotta left. Can you just take them out of there so I can use that container? Because everything is going to be sticky and you're going to have to throw it all away.
Right. You're cleaning up after this is a bitch. So anything that you can just dispose of is great. So that's why, like, if I don't need to be precise about the measurements, I'm going to use the sour cream or ricotta container or something like that, because it's going away anyway. So yeah. You need
upcycling.
right, spatulas, spreaders. You know, the little yellow ones that people used to put vinyl on or to spread Bondo or any of those kind of things. Those plastic spreaders, you're going to need those. Rubber or latex gloves, you're just going to go through plenty of those. Paper towels and acetone. Acetone is what actually can clean up this stuff, and it's going to get on things. There's no way around it. You need I need a solvent for it, and acetone is the preferred solvent for all this stuff. Brushes can also work. Chip brushes, not the foam ones don't work very well, but chip brushes work for wetting stuff out. Trying to think what else I've used with fiberglass stuff. Sandpaper. Eventually, you're going to need lots of sandpaper. Lots of sandpaper. If you want to finish it. If you're just doing rough work, you only need some. I think that's about it for normal supplies. Okay. So now, before we talk about the process, it's important that you understand how stuff bonds together when you're doing fiberglass. You've got a primary bond, a secondary bond, and bonds can be mechanical or chemical. So let's say you're making a spoiler, right? And you're a pro. You're making this from scratch. You make the whole thing out of fiberglass all in one shot, one go, and it's all one piece from the start. All your layers, all your resin, all the whole thing. You put in a mold, it comes out, boom. That is all entirely a primary bond, and it's all a chemical bond because the spoiler's all there, all bonded together, all at one time. And that's it. Now, if you break that spoiler and you got to stick it back together, or you want to add on a gurney flap to your spoiler, after everything's all hardened up and all done, you're putting a new set of resin on. That's a secondary bond. And a secondary bond is never going to be as strong as a primary bond. So as much as you can do the first go around to have it all in a primary bond together, the stronger the piece is going to be. The more different times you layer stuff onto it, sometimes it's completely necessary. You have to do it that way. But if the more you do as a primary bond, the stronger it is.
Okay.
Also understand the difference between a mechanical and a chemical bond. Chemical bond is when the chemicals can work together and they play nice and they meld together and interact. And Bill's telling me I'm doing it wrong, but just understand that it's about how the chemicals are interacting. The other kind of bond is a mechanical. And the epoxy is actually, or whatever resin you're using, is actually working its way into an uneven surface to grip that surface. And I'll use the repair the bumper example for this. You can't just toss the epoxy resin onto the bumper because it's a smooth plastic. You've got to grind it down enough that it's got teeth so the epoxy has something to grip into, because the epoxy can't make a chemical bond to the bumper, to the backside of it. It has to have a mechanical bond. So you need to grind it up and rough up the surface enough so that it has something to mechanically bond to. That's all understood? All good?
Yes. Now that because you're talking about a fibrous material with a chemical bonding thing that is basically looking to grab. So you can't.
It's the epoxy. It's if you put the epoxy on a smooth surface, what's holding it in place? Nothing.
Right. It'll come right off. It's kind of the same thing of scuffing something before you paint it, or at least before you prime it.
Yep, exactly. It's very similar in nature. But just remember that a primary bond is stronger than a secondary, and you've got to have an appropriate mechanical bond if it's not a chemical bond. So, okay.
Yes.
Let's go into the basic process. And I'm going to use two kind of examples. I'm going to talk about like a hole in your boat. So we've got a fiberglass layer that's got a hole in it, banged up against the dock or something. And I'm going to talk about the bumper repair, because I think that's a really useful thing for the kind of stuff that our listeners are dealing with in this. Okay. So for the bumper repair, you're prepping the surface. You cut back anything that's not going to get used, sand or grind away things that are sticking out that are going to be in the way, and grind back far enough for your entire repair to be covered. So if you might only be repairing a 4-inch crease, or not crease, a crack, but you need to go several inches on either side so that you have room for your fiberglass and resin to have a mechanical bond. if you only grind right on the crack, that doesn't give room on either side of it to bond, and that's where the strength is going to come from. So if you're doing, I'll do the boat afterwards because the bumper is a lot easier. So you're going to, usually do this on the back side is where you put the bulk of the material for your repair, because on the front side, you don't have the finished surface. You want the bulk of the material on the unfinished side. So you grind everything apart after you clean it all up, get the edges straight where you want it, make sure it's fitting together properly. Grind a couple inches on either side of your repair area to make sure you've got a mechanical bond. You now have to prep all your ingredients, because once you start, you basically can't stop it, because you want to do as much as you can to get everything done in a primary bond together.
And that's what Chrissy was saying earlier about have your stuff already laid out.
Yeah.
Okay.
So for the bumper, for example, I had it all shaped correctly. I had ground the crack so that it fit together as well as I could get it to fit, the little heat to get it to flex it to be in the right spot. Okay. I had used a grinder when I actually used a grinding flap disc on an angle grinder to cut into the plastic of the bumper on either side to get a good mechanical roughing up of the surface for good mechanical adhesion. Then I took, this time I used chop mat as my fiberglass. I didn't use weave. I used the chop mat.
Pull apart
Right.
stuff.
Yep.
Okay.
So I took literally chunks of it and then pulled it apart, or you can use scissors, but scissors don't work pretty well. So then just made chunks of it that were the right shape and size. If you're using weave, use scissors and just cut it to be the right shape and size. And typically what you want to do is you want to have a beveled surface. So if you're the finished side, imagine a bowl, a very shallow bowl. The finished side is on the table where the bowl is sitting on. And the back side is beveled. And you want to have layers that get progressively bigger as they go outward. So the very deepest part of your cut that you're repairing is going to be ground down the most, and it's going to have a small piece of fiberglass in it. Above that is going to be a larger piece of fiberglass. Above that is an even larger piece of fiberglass. And that can keep going depending on how many layers you need to use. Sometimes you can get it done in one layer, fine. If you're going through a pretty deep repair that you want to have it be a good quality repair, like on something that needs to be really strong, the further you feather it out and the more different layers you use going different directions, the stronger your repair is going to be.
Okay.
So with the car, we weren't going that far for the bumper. It wasn't that a big deal. I think I used 3 layers of chop mat that got progressively bigger. And the overall area of the repair was it was 4 inches across, maybe 5 inches, but it was at least 9 to 12 inches in total distance the other way, because I could go further that way.
And to give everyone a sense of scale, this is a non-structural crack in the center of a plastic bumper, not filling in a hole or anything. And that was, you said it ended up being 4 layers.
I did 3
ultimately the
layers.
biggest 3 layers, and the last one 9 to 12 inches.
No, the total repair ended up being about that. Yes. The last one was 9 to 12 inches long, 4 inches across. And it is a non-structural area, but it's a thin spot on the bumper, so that it's not like, you get a big wide panel of plastic. It's pretty strong. When it gets cutouts for fog lights and grills and things like that, it gets pretty weak. So that's why I went a little further with it, so that area would be strong. And it's also a spot that's just to the outside of the actual structure of the bumper. So if anything pushes on it, that's why it cracked in the first place, because it was outside of the structure. So that's why I want it to be a little stronger, that if it gets bumped into, even a very light bump, I didn't want it to crack again. So that's why we got extra strength in it.
So now in this area also, like I've seen or heard about, you can use thin bits of metal, or if you need something to mount a screw into, in those 3 layers, obviously you're going to sandwich it between mat.
Mm-hmm.
Would you put that closer to the surface that you're repairing, or closer to the surface exterior?
Closer to the backside, not the finished surface.
Okay.
Keep things away from the finished surface if you can, but don't have them be on completely on the outside if you can. Like you want to have maybe a layer on top of that. So if you're doing some 3 layers, I'd probably put 2 layers, whatever that, maybe captive nut that you want, and then the outer layer. And there's sandwiching in fiberglass is extremely effective. And that's how a lot of boat decks and things are built, is it's not just solid glass, it's a couple layers of glass and then a layer of wood or foam or something along. It's usually wood or foam, frankly. And then more glass on top of that. And that actually, because it has the couple layers, it actually gives it more strength than it might have otherwise. And it's certainly lighter weight.
Okay.
But the problem is what is inside potentially may not always be impervious to water, because eventually you drill a hole somewhere and water gets in, and now it gets in that wood and that wood rots. And now you have a cavity between your layers of fiberglass. And just like in a tooth, that's going to be weak and you're going to have to cut it out. And it's really a pain in the ass. This is why I really don't like vinyl ester resin. I had a boat once that was made of vinyl ester resin, and it was not completely water pervious or waterproof, and so water could seep through it. It gets into the wood sandwich structure behind it and can cause problems.
Is that why it
Um,
has fallen from favor?
It is, yep. But that's why epoxy is. That's why I think it's my preferred one, is because it is the most durable. So.
Right.
Yep. Okay. So we've got our fiberglass the actual glass fiber cloth or mat or whatever we're going to use ready. We've got, now, like Chrissy said, prep all your parts. Once you've got the dry stuff together and the surfaces prepped, you get your sticks, get your gloves, get your squeegee, get in a place where if it drips on stuff, it's going to be okay, or just account for the fact that it's going to drip. Chrissy?
In addition to the stuff that you need to work with it, on the occasion, you may find other things in your house that would like to be epoxied. And it is not a bad thing for you to come up with a list of things and find them before you start, because once you mix it and it starts making the chemicals, which is what you're going to go into, you may want to apply that little bit of extra, that hairbrush that broke. And I used for years with the head that just pops off the handle. Well, a little bit of epoxy just stuck those right back together. I was like, I need a new brush. I'm just going to go buy a new brush. And Chris just stuck it right back together, and I used it for years.
So you grab even non-fiberglass stuff once the epoxy gets mixed up. And you got like a
Correct.
whole assembly line. So
He
it's
walks
like
in like
super glue.
it's
It
like
is.
it's
It's like
it's
super glue.
great super glue, because
All right.
we actually just had a ornament that had Asti on it, and it broke, and we put it in a pile and said, next time we make some epoxy, we'll fix that. So now is a good time for you to think, hey, is there anything that we just need to fix? It won't be pretty, but it'll be functional. Well, I mean, you might be able to make it pretty. Most of the things we fixed are just to be functional. Again, sorry to jump in there, but
No, that's
as
great.
you're
but
lining things
that's
up.
an E1R top tip. Yeah, saving your old stuff to have in a garage to mix garbage. Things that like one-time use items. You're throwing that cup away. So why buy an expensive graded cup when you can just use leftover cottage cheese? And then yes, and the nature of what we do is things that serve only one purpose are wasteful.
You're always going to have some left over, like a little bit. There's always going to, even if it's just some scraping down the sides of the container. And if you can fix that, who knows what plastic thing that broke. I've used it to fix like my drill batteries, my Makita batteries. The two sides come apart or starting to come apart. Well, okay, great. Here's some resin on it. Especially I've made up some thickening, some adhesive filler for filling in some holes in the bumper, and I just stuck that in where it had come apart. I put it in the clamp, and boom, it's fixed. Things like that comes in
Things like
really
that.
handy. Yep. All right, so you've got you got your mat ready. You've got all your gloves. You've got your acetone. You've got your popsicle sticks. You got your spreaders. You got all that stuff ready to go. Now you mix up your resin. You pick the right hardener for whatever temperature you're going to be working in. Mix, 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 and then you got to wet out your fiberglass fully, and that means it's got to essentially, like, imagine you put a paper towel down on some water on your counter, and if you just put it down and pick it right up, it doesn't soak all the way through, right? You need to get it soaked all the way through with the resin. You can do this if you're doing a bigger batch of something. You can actually just dunk the resin in, or dunk the fiberglass in the resin, pick it up out, let it drain a little bit, and use that. You can put the glass down, like the first layer down, and pour some resin on it, and then work it with your popsicle stick or with your scraper to make sure that the resin soaks fully into the fiberglass. Then put your next layer on. Then put your next layer on. Repeat, but they all need to be fully soaked with the resin for this all to work. It's sticky, it's messy. You're going to do it wrong for a while. Like it's not going to be quite right, but that's okay. It's going to get all over the place. You're going to have little bits of fiberglass sticking to the end of all your gloves. It's going to be terrible. And okay, you know what? Take those gloves off and put new ones on. Really. Like don't mess around with it. It's going to be more hassle than it's worth. Or wipe your scraper off. Start again. Like, or not start again, but try to clean it up, smooth it out. If you've got kind of a gap on the back side or on the finish side of work you're working on, it's great to put some either packing tape or saran wrap or something like that on it to help keep it from dripping through, just to hold it together. And so just wet the fiberglass all out, smooth it all out. And this is important. You have to push it down and get all the air out of it. If you have air gaps between stuff, you have just broken your primary bond. It's not actually bonded together anymore because it's air. It can't bond to air. So you'll hear about vacuum bagging composites. That's when you literally make a composite, probably in a mold, and you put it in a bag and apply vacuum to that bag so that the bag sucks down to the piece to get all the air pockets out of it. You're going to have air pockets if you try to do things that are sharp radiuses, usually, if you can't pull on it really. But you've got to get the air out anywhere you possibly can, because that's going to be a weak point.
And that's not like a one-time deal. Like you have to go back if you have like those molds sitting out and you didn't vacuum bag it, you have to go back and check on that, right? Because when you've got chemicals reacting, that can make air bubbles. Or am I just
no, these
off?
ones don't make air bubbles, but if you just kind of push it down and it doesn't want to stay down, it can pop back up. So you could even use some sacrificial things to you put a tip of a popsicle stick on there with some weights on it or something just to hold things down. But if you have enough resin and not a terrible shape, you can just do this with your technique.
Okay.
So, now I'll use the other example, like fixing a hole in a boat. You got a hole in a boat. It's in the side of the boat. Okay. You might say, oh, I'm just going to clean up the edge of this hole and fix that. And that's going to be, if it's a big enough hole, it's not going to work at all because it needs to spread out to have a good quality repair. If it's a small, it's like a divot, it doesn't go through the fiberglass. You can probably get away with something like we talked about earlier with using a structural filler with some bits of fiberglass mixed in it, all pushed into the hole. Mix that in, put it over the hole where it protrudes just slightly from the outer surface. Put some saran wrap over that, wait till it dries, then you sand it, and then fair it, and then you can paint it. That's for a little divot.
That feels like a Bondo kind of.
It is. It's
almost.
but it's a much stronger Bondo.
Okay.
Now let's say you put a hole in it, and this hole is like bigger than a golf ball. There's a hole there. You need to now start grinding fiberglass. And grinding fiberglass is just terrible. It is awful. Cover as much of your skin as you can. But no,
what if it's very hot? Should I still cover my skin?
You should try.
I know the answer to this question, and the answer, having not worked with fiberglass like this, but worked with insulation, the answer is even more so when it's very, very hot, because your pores will open and that crap will get into your pores and itch you for days.
Yeah.
Yep.
Actually, not itch you, actually irritate.
Oh yeah. So here's a top tip for that. If you've got it in your skin and it's hot, do not go take a hot shower to get it off.
But I want to.
Cold water.
Yes, you do. But
I know.
you don't.
Cold water, because the cold water closes your pores up and it kind of squishes the little bits of glass. It says literally there are pieces of glass in your skin. it'll squish the piece of glass up out with cold water. Hot water opens your pores up and it falls in deeper and takes away longer to clean up. So cold water rinse after fiberglass. So, all right. So now you're grinding. You're grinding a spot, and you're going to grind a spot that is probably at least 4 times as big as the actual hole that you're trying to fill. And it's going to be beveled out. So it's going to be ground down pretty far down by the hole, but by 4 times, if it's a 2-inch hole, 8 inches away, it's going to be very light. And the reason is that because you're going to layer your fiberglass in there, and it's going to be the most layers in the hole and gradually less as it goes out. And if you're expanding the repair area, it's actually going to be a stronger repair. So you'll start off with a piece that just fits in the hole, and then a piece that's a little bit bigger, and then a piece that's a little bit bigger than that, a piece that's a little bit bigger than that. And it depends on how thick the material you're working with. How if you're using a mat, how thick the mat is, or if you're using a cloth, how thick the cloth is. That's how many layers you're going to need, and gradually build it out over that area to fill in that hole. And it might take 2 layers, it might take 8. Depends on what you're using and how and the repair. But you want to have this same technique though. Get all the fiberglass, the substrate cut and done first. Get the area fully prepared and cleaned too. I forgot to do that. After you grind it, you've got to clean it. Wipe it all down with acetone, because if there's dirt and contaminants into it, the epoxy can't stick to what you're trying to repair. It's got to be
So
clean.
even though you've roughed the surface, it's got to be clean.
Yep. So
Got it.
I would say blow it off with air, but Chrissy doesn't like that. So just
You're blowing
Especially
tiny little
not
irritating bits of
vacuum.
right
fiberglass around.
everywhere.
right. So vacuum with a good filter, and then wiping it down with epoxy, or not epoxy, acetone. Wiping things with acetone is never bad with this kind of stuff. It just cleans it up. So now if it's in a vertical surface where you're worried about it running once you put it on there, because great, I put all this stuff on there. It's got fiberglass, it's got resin, that's all still kind of liquid. That's going to sag. So if you can put it so that it's horizontal and it's not going to sag, great. Other than that, you've got to hold it up, which I'd recommend using something like saran wrap with a lot of tape on it to hold tight, to hold it so that it is not able to sag as much. But just know that it is still liquid. It's going to sag. So try to have it horizontal.
And is that one of those things where you have to sand it, then redo it again?
You don't have to read the whole thing, but you're going to have to sand out. Otherwise, you're going to have a big lump in it. So you have to sand that lump all off, and then you're probably going to have be a divot on the top and a lump on the bottom. And so you're going to have to sand the lump off and then make a new hole repair for that divot. Repeat. So you don't want to do that, because now you're into a secondary bond, or actually it's a secondary bond on a secondary bond. So it's even worse.
Oh, okay. Because it's all right. Because you bet,
Right.
but yeah, you haven't roughed it.
I mean, you can
Okay.
keep adding more layers and more layers and more layers, and it's okay. But if you can do stuff in a primary bond, it is the preferred way to do it.
Okay. So that's the prep that comes beforehand.
Right.
Okay.
And then you wait for it to dry or harden up. And this depends on your temperature and your humidity. And while it's all doing this, you don't want it to get wet. You don't want to get like a whole lot of dust in it. You want to try to avoid those things, especially the wet. So cover it up, keep it protected, keep it supported. And now you've got it structurally repaired before you go on to your finished work. Questions, thoughts, anything right now?
I feel like I understand everything you're telling me, and I'm still going to go screw this up about 4 times.
Sure.
But you actually prefaced it with, "That's how you learn."
Yeah. Go to West Systems webpage. They have a lot of really nice tutorials on stuff. And I'll give you I'm jumping ahead of suppliers, but a supplier I've used quite a lot that I quite like is called Jamestown Distributors. They're in Rhode Island. They make a lot of great stuff. And they are also very helpful in customer service. You can call them and say, "Here's what I'm trying to do." And they will hook you up with the right products for what you're trying to do. On their website, they also have a lot of DIY tutorials for things. And it's not just how to fix this thing in your boat or how to paint this part of your boat. It's oh, I want to make an epoxy table or epoxy covered table. How do I do that?
Ooh, all that stuff I've seen on the
Yeah,
TikToks and the grams.
right.
All right,
And
we
so
will
they'll
have a
tell you
link
how
to
to
that
do that.
Jamestown Fiberglass.
Jamestown Distributors is what it's called.
Yes. Sorry, Jamestown. I just went to their website. Yes.
Yep. Jamestown Distributors, West System for the epoxy resin. All right, so now we're into finish work. And this depends if you care. Like the backside of the bumper, I didn't finish it because it doesn't need to be finished. It's fine. But if you're on the finish side, well, now you're finishing it, like you might with any usual kind of paint or bodywork project. Sand it down to first because you've got to clean it up and get rid of the high spots. Use your fillers, and if it's pretty smooth, you can get away with just a fairing filler. If it's a little more work you need to do, you might need to do a couple layers. You might need a thicker filler than the fairing filler. You might need more of a structural filler. Okay. Um, and you've once that's all done, the best practice is you've got to now seal it, which you can do by putting a layer of just pure straight epoxy over the top of it,
Okay.
because that seals all those fillers. For a lot of stuff we're doing, it's probably not necessary, but this is the best practice to do, is to seal it all with just a thin layer of straight up epoxy. Now, once you've done that, there is a byproduct of the epoxy resin called amine blush, which is like a waxy residue that comes up on the surface of the epoxy. And you got to remove that if you want whatever you're going to try to paint onto it to stick. And the best way to do it is with a red Scotch-Brite pad.
Huh. Okay.
And water, and that mechanically removes the amine blush layer from the epoxy resin. If you don't really care about painting over it much, or you don't really care if it sticks that well, don't worry about it. But if you're doing it on the bottom of a boat, you absolutely need to do this. It does help though, because sometimes whatever you're painting over it or whatever you're applying over it might not be particularly compatible with it. So maybe it wouldn't be with the fillers, maybe it wouldn't be with the epoxy itself, but some kind of sealer over the top of that. And you've heard of like epoxy primers, like for bodywork. That's a
Yes.
great thing to put over the epoxy resin. Or you could use the epoxy primer over the filler like you would for bodywork, but somehow you've got to get some kind of sealer over the top of that. And I'm generally a fan of epoxies because they don't harden up until you mix them together, and then you have your time to work. But then when they're hardened up, they harden up well, and it's a chemical hardening, not a drying. The drying doesn't ever seem to work as well as a chemical hardening.
But that is still like temperature, environment
Mhm.
dependent.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Yep. Anytime you got those, it's going to be somewhat temperature and environment dependent.
Okay.
I mean, same way drying is. You spray Rust-Oleum on something, it's going to dry faster if it's hot and dry than if it's wet and humid. Okay.
Yes. Yeah.
So once you've got it sealed, whether it's whether it's using resin or using an epoxy primer or something like that, then it's in the typical layers of sand, check, apply more, repeat. That's how it works. If you want a really nice surface, like when we did the Whaler, it was many layers of checking it, and then you're using guide coats with your sanding to make sure you didn't miss anything. You got to fully sand it all to make sure you got that good mechanical adhesion for the next layer and to knock down the high spots, etc. But yeah, grinding fiberglass is tragic. It really is, but sometimes necessary. And there's been so many things that we've repaired with fiberglass over the years that are that are car things or house things that I wouldn't have thought of. I would have known how to do.
Well,
Except
how
that I
many
used to
times did
do the boats?
well, and not you're going in the water boat, but you're racing car boat.
That only got crunched in the nose a couple of times, but yeah, we did have to put it back together once somewhat, and we didn't do a very good job. We just made it structurally sound. It was a little droopy.
That's what those pictures were from. That was
Yeah.
Jeff's way old house putting the boat nose back together. Yes.
Yeah. All right. So suggested materials and suppliers. We've already talked about Jamestown Distributors. They have a line called Total Boat that is typically very good. But basically, most of the stuff they sell is going to be good quality, and they have good customer service and reasonable prices. West System Epoxy can be bought anywhere, and there's all kinds of stuff. It's not just the resin; they have all the fillers and different things you can use with that, and great instructions on how to use their product. And another place I like to get marine stuff in general is called Defender. That's it. Defender.com, like the Land Rover. They have very good prices on a lot of marine things.
Ooh, yes.
So those are the places I would suggest you use for this. But it can be incredibly versatile. It can be incredibly useful. And this is just the basic stuff. If you really wanted to get fancy and make quality parts, you have to make molds. And the best way to make a mold is with a good piece. So like say you wanted to make I'll do this real quick. Say you want to make a fiberglass hood and you want to do it right. You'd take your stock hood and you'd put a whole bunch of fiberglass over it and make a mold of what the outside of the hood is. And then you do the same thing on with the underside of the hood.
Now, because you're laying fiberglass on top of that to make the mold.
Yeah.
What do you put between the good piece and the fiberglass you're laying on top of it so that it doesn't stick to
forever?
it?
Yeah.
Yes.
Some people use literally layers of packing tape. But there's a lot of products for this. It's called mold release compound. So you'd smear the mold release compound on it so that it will come off when you're done.
Okay.
And so a mold is a way to set up to make more than one of a thing, or to make a good quality one of a thing. You can make a mold by using the piece you're trying to replicate. You can make a mold by like 3D printing a thing and working over the top of that. You can make a mold out of wood or foam. So you can carve a piece of foam to be a weird compound shape, and you can make a mold out of that. So you can make a mold out of a whole variety of things. And what happens with the mold is you use the mold to make the finished piece. So I'll use the hood example. So you have a mold of the top of the hood that you've made and of the bottom of the hood. Once you pop those off of the hood, well, now you've got these pieces that are a negative of the hood. But to actually use them to make a fiberglass hood, you now have to finish these like you would finishing a show car. They need to be perfectly smooth. They need to have the creases all in the right layer. So you're going to be using lots of different layers of your fillers and your fairing and your epoxy, and you're going to seal it, and it's got to have like a perfectly smooth finish on it so that the piece you're making actually comes out of the mold without destroying it. And well, the piece you're making will have a nice smooth finish, because anything that's in that mold, if it's got a crease in it, great. So does every part you make out of that mold.
So
It's incredibly time consuming to deal with molds, but it is the best quality work.
So in that realm,
yeah,
you have a lower threshold for fiberglass work than most people because you understand it, you know what you're doing, you know how to set it up and prep, and you can commit a day to, okay, Tuesday I'm just going to be itchy and we'll fix a bunch of stuff while we're doing it. What is your threshold that you would make a mold for a race car part?
It depends on how nice you wanted it to look.
You personally,
and
for one of your race cars.
I probably wouldn't ever.
Okay.
Because if it's
and
that
is
like
an answer. Yeah.
Yeah. Like especially if I was doing something very custom, like I had a very custom front bumper that I wanted to make, that is where I might do it. Like because if I had a weird bodywork shape and a weird aero need, and I had kind of made it, but I knew it was fragile, and if I ran in a series that it was likely to get damaged again, and I thought this is important, and there's no good way, that is the time I would do it, because it's a huge pain in the ass, but it's a way to make better quality products. And once you have a mold, you can make the thing again fairly easily, but making the mold is a real pain.
Yeah. And if you're going to make the thing, you'd make like 6 of them and then
Right.
put the mold away. Okay.
Yes. But if you have a mold, you can make the thing again. But once the molds are destroyed, it's never going to be the same. Not quite right. But if you have the mold, you can make a lot of them the same way.
All right.
Okay. So do you know enough to be dangerous now? Do you think?
Oh, I don't need to know that much to be dangerous. I know
That's
a
true.
lot more.
You were
than when we
dangerous before
started.
this, but
yes, I was very dangerous. No, but I do understand a lot more of it now, and having it kind of explained in a 3-dimensional thing. Cause I just thought, I remember watching a documentary of Ed Roth, who kind of like led the charge on fiberglass as a custom material. But he also did not lead the charge on safety. And ultimately, that's part of one of the things that killed him. Is it was a brand new material, and they were sanding it and smoking while they're doing it, kind of a deal. And he was literally molding it with his hands to get the shapes that he wanted, and then he would sand it down afterwards. And that's how I was thinking of it,
but
almost
it's-
like a clay rather than a layered sheetrock mud or bondo and body work, and lay it out. And except with all the without prep work between the layers, you want to have all those layers ready to go, and then you build it up as it is all going there, and you're still gonna the doing the thing is easy. It's 90% of the prep work, and then the other
and the finish
80%
work.
of it afterwards is the finish work.
Yeah, the structural part of the actual fiberglass substrate and the resin doesn't take very long and isn't very hard. It's getting the surface ready to do it.
And that's
getting all the
probably
pieces ready.
where most idiots like me
Right. And then it's the
just
it's
cut
the
it
finish
out.
work. Finish work after that is what kind of quality do you want it to be? How do you want it to look?
Yeah.
And that's in your finish work.
Because you
which
did
can
actually
take-
do something on the boat, and it just didn't turn out the way you wanted. You ripped it out and did it over on your Boston whaler. I remember it was
It
something on
happens
the floor or
sometimes.
something.
Yeah, happens sometimes.
So
Unfortunately.
you also have to be committed to the fact that you might look down and go, well, we'll put that one in the oopsie pile.
Get itchy.
So
It's a
itchy.
really useful skill, and hopefully, don't be afraid of it. But also, don't say like, I'm gonna make this entire big thing out of fiberglass. How hard can it be? It's hard.
Yeah.
Start small.
Fix some
Alright.
things, cover some things up,
There you
sand
go.
a lot, add
Make the little
more,
repairs.
sand a lot.
Like, it's
add
little.
more.
There's so many little repairs that I've done. Like Mental, I don't know if you ever remember taking the underside trays off of the CLS, but when I got the car, they had some small cracks and a number of them near the mounting panel, so I had them all
Yes.
off, and I made little fiberglass repairs to all of them just with one layer of cloth and the resin, and it held up pretty nicely.
And I had some instances where I had to do the same thing. My repairs did not hold up as nicely as yours because I did not put in the prep work. I just fiberglass, slap it on there, just under the car. And I didn't get good adhesion, and ultimately it ended up kind of shattering on me at speed.
Yep.
That
Resin
makes
is brittle.
so much more sense now.
Yeah, right. Who knew?
Wow.
Yeah.
It's good. Well, we would love to see if anybody is good at fiberglass or has done fiberglass, or is going to attempt to. But if you've already done a fiberglass fix, it'd be great to see it, listeners.
Yeah.
Yes.
Those are the people that are going to be better at this than I am and tell me what I got wrong, which I'm sure there's something, but this is what has worked for me, and it's fine for the real basic stuff that our listeners
I don't
might be
think
doing.
any of us have an ego to be corrected on something that, especially things that we're self-taught on, to
If
be
you know
taught how
good
to do it
techniques,
correctly.
great.
Yeah, please.
I've just learned this
correct us all
by
day.
reading and doing.
Yeah.
Mostly.
And it's worked for plenty of things. So
Yeah.
we refinished a boat, and we made a great splitter and front and rear splitter on the
yeah,
Civic.
that's splitters. It's great for that you use make the plywood the shape you want, and then even
Cover
if you
it.
just put a layer of epoxy resin over it, you've now made that plywood stronger and more durable. But if you just put a thin layer of cloth over the whole thing, now it's way more durable, because remember that sandwich we talked about? Great, you've got
Yep.
that, and you've got this nice sealed outer layer of epoxy on it. It's so much stronger when you do it that way, and it doesn't take that long.
Rear was made out of chloroplast, I believe. So we
It
made
was.
the chloroplast,
Diffuser.
exactly how we wanted it, and then and then put all kinds of.
Yeah, then we put a thin layer of cloth over that with the resin too, and stiffened it up. But the chloroplast was a nice sandwich filler to give it
Yeah.
extra strength.
Or just to create the shape, because that stuff,
Yep.
you get that at Michael's and Hobby Lobby.
Lowe's Depot
Cool.
also says them.
Or
Okay.
after elections, they're free.
Yep, and people are happy for them to go. Then you just have to deal with whoever's on your
Get off my
yes.
lawn.
Pretty much. Well,
Yep.
I'll just take the sign because they lost and you don't want the sign anymore. So
Oh, even if they won, I don't want the sign anymore. Yeah.
yeah, that's true. Yoink. So I think I don't know that we need to talk about all of this for just the tip, but I think we talked about a lot of it. Mental, thank you for adding this. It's just a tip. Really just the biggest thing on here. We talked about making sure that you're wearing clothes in the picture that you will see on the front page of this episode, is Chris and I, and Mental flashed it up there. Chris does not have a long sleeve shirt on. I do. Pretty sure it was hot. Pretty sure it was gross, but my arms probably weren't as itchy as Chris's were. So
No,
that's
I knew
huge.
what I was getting into. I made a well-informed bad decision.
Apparently you did. I mean, it was all over her face and it was just awful. But the bigger thing is what Chris alluded to about not blowing it around and in those pictures, we have respirators, like actual respirators on, big air ones, not a dust mask and not like not a
not going to the grocery
SBA,
store
right?
in COVID.
Right.
Yeah,
No, we
yeah.
have like legit ones on, and it helps and it's necessary. So,
And
making sure that you're wearing.
and it's not just going to irritate your lungs; it is going to physically make you sick. Like you're going to be bedridden if you start inhaling this stuff.
I would say with the amount of stuff that Chris, when you're doing if you're fixing a hairbrush, probably don't need a respirator. If you are making a front nose of a boat, probably if you're doing a whole lot of work after if you're making a splitter or a diffuser and you're doing a whole lot of grinding after that, it's definitely going to be a good answer to do.
Yeah.
Make sure that it's blowing away from you and try to do whatever you can. So get that mask. And that's as part of the
It's
stuff that
not
you're
with like working with fiberglass, but I've made myself physically sick with fiberglass insulation.
Yeah. Well, if it itches your skin, what's it doing to your lungs? So let's not do that.
It's irritating wherever it goes. So.
Right. Yeah. So there's plenty of all additional precautions, but hopefully we've scared you enough to make you think about what you're grinding. And good luck to you. And can't wait to see what you come up with. What are you talking about
Yeah.
next week?
I don't know. It was pretty good that we had this topic at a time. That was
Only
that
because
was
you've been
better than
doing it and
usual.
decided that we probably could talk about it. So we'll come up with
Yeah.
something.
I'm sure we'll
Probably.
come up with something. We always
I'm
come up with
sure.
something.
And if you've
I'm
got
sure.
one of those somethings, let us know.
Always.
Yeah, Al Jones also threatened to come on the show and talk about why it took him 6 years to start doing lemons and the 4 cars that they didn't finish in the meantime. So, how not to do it. Follow our social medias this week because I am driving back from Oklahoma in my new free for $1 truck.
Free for $1. Fantastic.
What?
Yes.
Oh no.
We'll hear about that
Okay.
later. Anyway,
Can't wait.
thanks for downloading us. We hope you enjoyed this week's edition of Everyone Racers. Hope you're going to join us in the world of driving, racing, building, and being itchy because everyone can destroy a boat, even you. If you enjoyed the podcast, subscribe. It's free. And go to iTunes. Give us that 5-star rating. Don't care what you think. 5 stars and tell us why. Questions, show ideas, comments, emotional outbursts. Drop us a comment on any of the places that have comments, things like everyone.racers@gmail.com, Reverend Racers, and any of the things. Text Mental pictures of the things you've ruined with fiberglass at 484-243-0455. And until next week, keep the unfinished side where all the magic happens and keep it pretty on the shiny side.